Tonight, we're journeying into a world of stark contrasts, a time of profound faith and deep-seated fears. We're exploring the heart of the Middle Ages, but we're leaving behind the grand battles and the gleaming tournament nights that you might imagine. Instead, we're going to find a story that is quieter, more personal, and in many ways, far more real. We'll be touching upon the chilling legend of the droit du seigneur, or the right of the first night, and weaving a tale of love and defiance around this historical shadow. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I love reading your comments, so feel free to let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now find that perfect position. Dim the lights, close your eyes, and let the world outside fade away. Our story is waiting. The air smells of damp earth, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet scent of hay from the nearby fields. You can feel the familiar weight of the two wooden buckets, one in each hand, their rope handles digging just slightly into your palms. The water within sloshes gently, a rhythmic, liquid metronome marking your steps along the well-trodden path back to the village. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, sleepy shadows that stretch from the hedgerows like grasping fingers. It is the time of day when the world seems to slow, bathed in a syrupy golden light that makes the thatch on the cottage roofs glow like spun gold. This is the rhythm of your life, a pattern as predictable and as comforting as the seasons. You wake with the rooster's crow, you work through the day, and you find rest when the sun dips below the horizon. Your world is small, contained by the rolling hills to the east and the dark line of the forest to the west. In the centre of it all is your village, a tight cluster of wattle and daub homes huddled around the simple stone church. Its squat tower, the only thing that dares to truly challenge the height of the ancient oak trees. Your dress is made of coarse, undyed wool, a practical garment that has seen many seasons. You can feel the familiar scratch of it against your skin, a sensation so constant you barely notice it anymore. The path under your worn leather shoes is uneven, a mix of packed dirt and loose stones, but your feet know it by heart. They know which roots to step over and which puddles to avoid after a morning rain. There is a simple contentment in this knowledge, in the deep familiarity of your small world. You know the face of every person you pass, the bark of every dog, the particular creak of every cottage gate. As you draw nearer to the village proper, the sounds become richer, the distant, rhythmic clang. Clang. Clang of the blacksmith's hammer, striking iron, a sound as integral to the village as a heartbeat. You hear the lowing of cattle being brought in from the pasture for the evening milking, the high-pitched laughter of children chasing a stray chicken, their bare feet slapping against the dirt. And then, a sound that rises above all others, rolling across the landscape with a solemn authority. The church bell begins to toll for vespers, the evening prayer. This is the true clock of your world. It is a verifiable historical truth that for centuries, the lives of ordinary people were governed not by the hands of a clock, but by the sacred ringing of the Angelus or the evening bells. They told you when to begin work, when to pause for prayer, and when the day's labour was done. The sound settles over the valley, a blanket of resonant bronze, calling everyone home. And as if summoned by the bell itself, you see him. Elian. He is leaning against the low stone wall that marks the edge of the village, waiting for you. He is not a knight in shining armour, nor a lord in fine silks. He is a stonemason's apprentice, and his beauty to you is in his reality. There is a fine dusting of pale limestone on his dark hair and on the shoulders of his linen tunic. His hands are strong and calloused from the chisel and mallet, yet they are the gentlest hands you have ever known. He sees you, and a smile transforms his face. It's a slow, quiet smile that makes his blue eyes seem impossibly bright in the fading light. He pushes himself off the wall and walks to meet you, taking the heavy buckets from your hands without a word. The relief in your arms is immediate, but it is nothing compared to the relief in your heart. Just the sight of him is enough to make the world feel right, to smooth out the rough edges of a long day. "You were long at the well," he says, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. "Agnes was there," you reply, a small smile playing on your lips. She had much to say about the price of salt and the Reeve's new horse. He chuckles, a warm, easy sound. Agnes always has much to say. You walk side by side, not touching, but you are so aware of the space between you, a space charged with unspoken affection. In your world, courtship is not a grand affair of flowery poems and public declarations. It is a thing of quiet moments, of shared glances, of small, meaningful gestures. A modern observer might miss it entirely, but these subtle interactions carry a universe of meaning. Your betrothal is sealed not by a diamond ring, but by a promise. It's a social custom as old as the hills you live in, the hand-fasting. A full year and a day ago, you and Elian met by the ancient gnarled oak tree that stands on the rise behind the church. There, with only the rustling leaves as your witness, you clasped hands and pledged yourselves to one another. It was a promise to work toward a formal, church-sanctioned marriage, a declaration of intent recognized by the entire community. It was a peasant's engagement, simple and profound, an oath that felt more binding to you than any legal document written on fancy parchment. He had given you a small, clumsily carved bird, whittled from a piece of scrap yew wood. Its lines were not perfect, but you could feel the hours of care he had put into it. You still have it, tucked away safely with your few other treasures, your mother's rosary and a smooth grey stone you found in the river as a child. In return, you had given him a band of braided linen, woven with a single strand of your own hair, a secret tribute hidden within the simple design. He wears it still, tied around his wrist, now faded and worn from his work. Not exactly a text message, but this simple, tangible object carried a world of devotion. As you walk, your fingers brush against his, a fleeting touch that sends a familiar warmth through you. He glances down, his smile softening, and for a moment, the world shrinks to just the two of you on this dusty path. The future feels as solid and as promising as the stones he shapes for the Lord's new manor wall. A life with him, a cottage of your own perhaps, children with his bright blue eyes and easy smile. It's a simple dream, but it is your everything. You pass the small, windowless side of the village church. Its stone walls are cool and grey, covered in patches of green moss. You can almost feel the centuries of prayers that have been absorbed into its very fabric, the hopes and fears of generations who have sought solace within its sanctuary. One can only wonder at the silent bargains struck with saints in the flickering candlelight, the desperate pleas whispered for a good harvest, a healthy child, or a safe return. Elian shifts the weight of the buckets. My master says the north wall of the new hall will be finished by the harvest moon. You nod, understanding the unspoken meaning. With the big project finished, his master will have coin, and Elian will receive his share. Enough perhaps for the marriage fee to the priest, enough to finally begin. The thought makes your heart beat a little faster, a flutter of anticipation that is both thrilling and a little terrifying. To have a dream so close to coming true is to have everything to lose. You have reached the small, tidy cottage that you share with your mother and younger brother. A thin plume of smoke rises from the hole in the thatched roof, a welcoming signal that the evening meal is being prepared. The door, made of simple, rough-hewn planks, is slightly ajar. Elian sets the water buckets down by the threshold. "I will see you on the morrow," he says, his gaze lingering on your face. "On the morrow," you echo softly. He hesitates for a second, and you think he might say more. But he just gives you one last lingering smile before turning and heading toward his own family's home on the other side of the village green. You watch him go until his silhouette merges with the deepening twilight. You stand there for a long moment, the cool evening air on your cheeks, your heart full of a quiet, hopeful love. The world, in this moment, feels safe. It feels kind. You pick up one of the buckets and step across the threshold into the warm, fire-lit heart of your home, unaware of the long shadow that is already beginning to fall over your simple, happy future. You close the heavy plank door behind you, the simple wooden latch falling into place with a familiar, solid thunk. The single room of your cottage is warmer than the evening air, filled with the comforting smell of simmering pottage and the earthy scent of the herbs hanging from the rafters to dry. The only light comes from the glowing embers in the central hearth, a pulsating orange heart that casts dancing shadows on the packed earth floor and the rough, lime-washed walls. Your younger brother, Leo, is already asleep on his straw pallet in the corner, his breathing soft and even. Your mother looks up from the iron pot she is stirring. She is a woman whose face is a map of her life. The fine lines around her eyes speak of laughter and sun, while the deeper ones on her brow speak of worry and long winters. She gives you a tired but gentle smile. The buckets are full. "Good," she says, her voice raspy from the smoke. "Your brother fetched the kindling, so the fire will last the night." You nod, moving to the small table to begin setting out the wooden bowls and spoons for your meal. The domestic ritual is soothing, a quiet choreography you have performed countless times. But tonight, the happy thrum in your chest from seeing Elian makes every movement feel lighter, more hopeful. Your mother seems to sense it. She stops stirring for a moment, her gaze knowing. "You saw the mason's boy." It isn't a question. You feel a slight blush creep up your neck, and you focus on arranging the spoons with unnecessary precision. "His name is Elian, Mother." "I know his name," she says, a hint of gentle teasing in her tone. She resumes her stirring. "He is a good worker, honest. The whole village knows it. His master speaks highly of him." This praise, coming from your pragmatic mother, is a rare and precious thing. It emboldens you. "The work on the Lord's new hall is nearly done," you say, your voice softer than you intend. Elian thinks they will be finished by the harvest moon. You watch your mother's back. For a moment, she is still. The only sound is the soft bubbling of the pottage and the crackle of the fire. When she finally speaks, her voice has lost its earlier warmth. It is flat, cautious. "Then the Lord will expect his due." The words hang in the air, heavy and unwelcome. She is speaking of the merchet, a historical reality as solid as the stone walls of the church. It is the Lord's right to levy a tax on the marriage of any woman on his lands. It is his compensation, the law says, for losing a worker from one family to another. In practice, it is simply another way the Lord's power touches every corner of your life. A reminder that nothing, not even your own heart, is truly your own. The fee is a few silver coins, a sum that would take Elian months to save. This you have known, this you have planned for. But your mother's tone suggests a shadow larger than a few pieces of silver. We will have the coin, you say, with a confidence you don't quite feel. Elian is careful. We have been saving. Your mother turns from the hearth, the wooden spoon dripping in her hand. The firelight carves deep shadows into her face, making her look older, more worried than she did a moment ago. It is not the coin I fear, child. Her eyes dart towards the corner where your brother sleeps, as if to ensure he is not listening. She lowers her voice to a near whisper, a tone that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. It is the Lord himself, Lord Valerius. You know of him, of course. Everyone does. His castle, a grim fortress of grey stone and narrow windows, is a constant brooding presence on the high northern ridge that overlooks your village. It is visible from almost every point in the valley, a permanent reminder of where the power truly lies. You have only seen the Lord a handful of times in your entire life, always from a distance. A dark figure on a powerful horse, surrounded by his men, his face unreadable and stern. He is a solitary man, a widower for many years, with no children. He rarely comes down to the village, preferring to issue his commands through his reeve. His distance makes him more of a legend than a man, a figure onto whom the villagers project all their fears. What of him, you ask, your own voice dropping to a whisper. Your mother leans closer, her expression intense. Have you forgotten the stories, the old custom, the right he can claim if he so chooses? And there it is, the chilling whisper you have heard on the edges of conversations your whole life. A story told by old women on dark nights, a fear passed down from mother to daughter like a cursed heirloom. Droit du seigneur, the right of the first night. The Lord's rumoured right to take the place of the groom on a vassal's wedding night. That is just a story, mother, you say, trying to keep your voice steady. A tale to frighten girls. No one has seen it happen. Not here. Not here. No, she concedes, her eyes dark with memory. But my grandmother, she was from the fiefdom across the river. She said the old lord there, the father of the current one, he was a different sort of man. He believed the old ways were the only ways. She does not finish the thought. She does not have to. This is how fear travels in a world without written news. It moves like a contagion on the breath of rumour and anecdote. This is a subtle social custom of your time. Gossip is not merely idle chatter. It is the primary vehicle for information, for warnings, for the collective anxieties of a community. A story from a grandmother about a place 2 days' walk away carries more weight than any official proclamation, for it is personal, intimate, and feels terrifyingly true. You feel a cold knot forming in your stomach. The warmth of the cottage seems to recede, the cheerful bubbling of the pot now sounding like a mocking laugh. The happy future you were just picturing, the small cottage, the children, the life with Elian, suddenly has a grotesque shadow draped over it. Lord Valerius is not that man, you insist, more for your own sake than for hers. He is a hard man, they say, but he is just. He is a lord, your mother corrects, her voice grim, and a lonely one. That is a dangerous thing. We do not know what is in his heart. It is a fear that lives in the silences between words, in the quick downward glances when a lord's name is mentioned. Why do you think that is? Because the power is his. The right is his. Whether he uses it or not is a matter of his whim. and our lives are governed by his whims. You look away from her, towards the small, shuttered window in the wall. You cannot see it from here, but you know that if you were to step outside and look to the north, you would see the castle's silhouette against the star-dusted sky. It is no longer just a building of stone and timber. It is the lair of the man who holds your happiness in the palm of his hand. The historical truth, though you could not know it, is that the droit du seigneur was most likely a myth. A piece of folklore that symbolized the immense and often arbitrary power that lords held over the people who lived on their land. But a myth can be as powerful as a law when it is believed. The fear was the point. The fear was a tool of control, a constant, unspoken threat that kept the peasantry subdued. The possibility, however remote, was enough to poison joy, to turn the hopeful planning for a wedding into a season of dread. Your mother ladles the thick, steaming pottage into your bowl. It is made of peas and barley, with a few bits of herbs for flavour. It is the same meal you have eaten 1,000 times, but tonight you know the taste will be different. It will be the taste of fear. You sit at the table, the rough wood cool beneath your forearms. You pick up your spoon, but you don't eat. You're thinking of Elian's smile, of the carved bird tucked away in your small wooden chest, of the simple, beautiful life you have dared to dream of. And you feel a cold, terrifying certainty that this dream is now under siege, not by an army or a famine, but by the whim of a single solitary man in a cold stone castle on a hill. The shadow you felt at the edge of your joy now has a name, and it is Lord Valerius. The next few days pass in a haze of quiet anxiety. You perform your chores with the same diligence as always, mending your brother's tunic, weeding the small kitchen garden, kneading the dough for the coarse, dark bread. But your mind is elsewhere. It is in the north, in the cold stone castle that punctuates the horizon. Every task, every conversation is tinged with the fear your mother's words unlocked. The laughter of the other village girls by the well sounds brittle and naive. The sight of a young married couple walking hand in hand fills you, not with happy anticipation, but with a sharp, painful pang of dread. You feel set apart, as if you were living behind a veil of glass, watching the world continue on, oblivious to the shadow that now covers you. You need to see Elian, not just a fleeting public smile as you pass on the village green, but truly see him. You leave a sign for him, a small, flat stone placed on a particular post of the fence bordering the pasture, a simple signal you have used before. It means to meet tonight at the old place, after the moon has risen, when the cottage is finally still and the soft sounds of your mother's and brother's sleeping breath fill the small space. You slip out of your cot. You move with a practiced silence, your bare feet making no sound on the cool earth floor. You lift the latch on the door with painstaking slowness, wincing at the slight groan of the wood. Then you are outside, in the cool, silvered air of the night. The village is transformed. The familiar, bustling place of your daylight hours is now a silent, sleeping creature, huddled under a blanket of stars. The moonlight smooths the rough edges of the world, painting the thatched roofs in shades of silver and ash. It feels as though you are the only person awake in the entire world. This is the surprising reality of courtship for people of your station. While nobles may have paraded their affections in scented gardens and great halls, your love story is written in these stolen, secret moments, far from the prying eyes of the community. It is a custom born of necessity, forging a bond that is intensely private and fiercely strong. You make your way along the edge of the woods, the path a faint, pale ribbon under the moon. Your destination is the great oak tree on the hill behind the church, the very same tree where you held your hand-fasting ceremony. This ancient tree is a landmark, a focal point of village life and lore. It is said that its roots go as deep as its branches are high, and its wood is so hard that no lightning has ever dared to strike it. It is a verifiable historical detail that certain trees, especially the mighty oak, were often held as sacred, places of meeting and oath-swearing, long before the church claimed that right. To you, it is simply your sanctuary, a silent, steadfast witness to your love. As you approach, its massive silhouette blots out the stars. You can hear the gentle rustle of its 1,000 leaves, a sound like a soft, constant whisper. You lean against its broad, gnarled trunk, the rough bark pressing into your back. You close your eyes and wait, breathing in the scent of night-damp soil and old wood. A few minutes later, a soft footfall behind you makes you start. But you know who it is before you even turn. Elian emerges from the shadows, his form dark against the moonlit field. He does not speak at first, simply coming to stand beside you, his presence a comfort. He looks at your face, and in the dim light, you can see the question in his eyes. "Your signal," he says softly. "I knew something was amiss." Tears you did not know you were holding back spring to your eyes. The fear you have been carrying alone for days suddenly feels too heavy to bear. "My mother, she spoke to me," you begin, your voice trembling slightly. "About the Lord, about the old custom." You don't have to name it. You see a flicker of understanding and a deep, familiar anger in his eyes. He has heard the stories too. Every boy in the village has. It is a part of their inheritance as much as it is a part of yours. But to hear it from you, to see the genuine terror it has placed in your heart, makes it real in a way it has never been before. He doesn't offer empty reassurances. He doesn't say it's just a foolish story. Instead, he reaches out and takes your hand, his calloused fingers wrapping firmly around yours. His touch is an anchor in a swirling sea of fear. "I have heard the whispers," he says, his voice low and hard. "My father speaks of it as a wickedness from a darker time, a Lord's threat to keep men's hearts full of fear." He squeezes your hand. "But it is a threat that will not touch you. I swear it." His certainty is a balm. You lean your head against his shoulder, and he wraps his arm around you, holding you close. You stand like that for a long time, listening to the breathing of the night, feeling the solid strength of his body next to yours. The fear does not vanish, but it changes. It is no longer just your burden. It is now our burden. After a long silence, he shifts slightly. "I have something for you," he says. He reaches into the small leather pouch at his belt and pulls out a small object. He presses it into your palm. You look down. In your hand lies a piece of smooth, dark wood, the same yew as the bird he once carved for you. This one is different. It is a small, intricately carved knot, a loop of wood that weaves over and under itself with no beginning and no end. It is beautiful, the lines perfect, the surface polished to a soft sheen by his patient hands. It is a lover's knot, a symbol of unbreakable connection. "For you," he whispers, "so you remember. What we have is real. It is solid. It is a knot that no man, not even a lord, can untie." You close your fingers around it, the wood warm from his body. It feels solid, real, a tangible piece of his promise. You remember the worn linen band on his wrist, and a sudden idea, a need to give something back, to reinforce your own vow, takes you. "Your wristband," you say softly. "It is frayed. Let me mend it." He holds out his arm, and you carefully untie the faded, braided cord. With nimble fingers, you unbraid the end, reweaving it tightly, making the fastening strong again. As you work, you weave in a tiny piece of strong red thread taken from your mother's sewing basket, a secret dash of colour that only the two of you will know is there. It is your mark, your own knot, a repair that is also a renewal. When you are finished, you tie it back onto his wrist, your fingers lingering on his skin. He looks from the mended band on his wrist to the wooden knot in your hand, and then to your face. In that moment, under the ancient, watchful eyes of the great oak, you are not a poor peasant girl and a mason's apprentice. In a world ruled by lords and laws, a simple promise between two people could feel like the most powerful kingdom of all. "We will find a way," he says, and it is not a hopeful wish, but a statement of fact, a vow. Whatever comes, we will face it. Together. Together, you echo, your voice now steady and clear. You stay a while longer, not speaking, simply drawing strength from the silence and the closeness. The moon climbs higher in the sky. Eventually, the chill of the deep night begins to seep into your bones. A reminder that this secret world cannot last forever. You must return before you are missed. The walk back to the village is different from the walk there. The shadows are still long, the silence just as deep, but the fear is no longer a paralyzing spectre. It has been replaced by a quiet, burning resolve. You slip back into your cottage as silently as you left. Curled up in your cot, you do not let go of the small wooden knot. You hold it tight in your fist. Its smooth, endless loops, a silent promise against your palm. For the first time in days, when you close your eyes, you do not see the looming shadow of the castle. You see the determined set of Elian's jaw, and you feel the unshakable strength of a knot that cannot be undone. The passing of a week does little to dull the sharp edge of your resolve, but it does much to fray the nerves. The secret knowledge you and Elian now share is a constant, humming presence beneath the surface of your days. When you see him at a distance, supervising the placement of a heavy stone at the new manor hall, there is a new weight to your shared glances. It is no longer just the sweet secret of affection, but the heavy secret of shared defiance. The wooden knot he gave you is always with you, tucked into a small pouch at your waist, or held tightly in your hand when no one is looking. It has become a kind of rosary for your fear, its smooth, unending loops, a reminder of a promise made in the dark. Then Sunday arrives, cool and overcast. The sky is the colour of slate, and the air holds the damp promise of rain. The church bell tolls, a sound that is usually a comfort, but today it sounds like a summons. You walk with your mother to Mass, joining the river of villagers flowing toward the squat stone church. Everyone is wearing their best, which for most means cleaner, less patched versions of their daily wool and linen clothes. The path is crowded, a murmur of quiet greetings passing between families. You keep your eyes fixed on the ground ahead of you, feeling as though every person you pass knows the anxious secret thrumming in your heart. Inside, the church is cool and smells of damp stone, beeswax, and the faint, lingering scent of incense from dozens of previous services. Light struggles through the tall, narrow windows, falling in dusty, pale shafts onto the stone floor. Your parish is not wealthy. There is only one small stained glass window, high above the altar, a gift from a previous lord decades ago. It depicts a stern-looking St. Peter, and the morning light catches in the panes of blue and red glass, scattering muted jewels of colour onto the altar stone. You and your mother find a space on one of the rough, backless wooden benches near the back. The men and women sit separately, as is the custom, So Elian is somewhere on the other side of the aisle with his father and the other men. You do not try to find him. Today, you feel too exposed to even risk a glance. A surprising historical truth about a medieval church service is that it was rarely the silent, reverent affair we might picture today. The Mass was in Latin, a language few understood, so for many, it was a social gathering as much as a spiritual one. A low hum of activity always filled the space. People would shift and murmur, children would fidget, and sometimes quiet business was even conducted in the back corners. The church was the heart of the village in every sense. But today, a strange tension seems to underlie the usual shuffle and whisper. Or perhaps you think you are just projecting your own feelings onto the room. You slip your hand into the pouch at your waist, your fingers closing around the carved knot. Its solidity is a small comfort. Father Thomas begins the Mass, his voice a familiar, reedy drone. The Latin phrases wash over you, words you have heard every Sunday of your life, their meaning known more through rhythm and repetition than through actual understanding. You kneel, stand, and sit when you are supposed to, your body moving through the familiar choreography while your mind races. You try to pray, but the words feel hollow, snatched away by the anxious beating of your heart. Finally, the service draws to a close. The final blessing is given. This is usually the point where the restrained energy of the congregation begins to bubble up, the rustling and whispering growing louder in anticipation of release. But today, a hush falls. Father Thomas remains at the altar, shuffling a piece of parchment in his hands. He clears his throat, and the sound seems unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. Before you depart, he begins, his voice echoing slightly in the stone chamber. There are announcements to be made. This is it. Your breath catches in your throat. You feel your mother stiffen beside you. You stare straight ahead, focusing on the wavering flame of a candle on the altar, trying to make your mind as still and blank as the stone wall behind it. Firstly, a reminder that the tithe of grain is due before the next full moon. The priest continues. A few groans and mutters ripple through the benches. Secondly, he pauses, and the silence that follows is absolute. He looks down at his parchment. Let it be known, he proclaims, his voice rising in the formal cadence of official announcements, that a promise of marriage has been made between Elian, son of Mathis the stonemason, and he says your name, your full name, including your father's. The sound of it spoken aloud in this place for this purpose makes your cheeks burn with heat. This is the first reading of the banns, he declares. If any person here knows of any just cause or impediment why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, they are to declare it now or on the next 2 Sundays of reading. This was the law. A verifiable part of medieval life, the reading of the banns was designed to prevent secret or illegal marriages. For 3 consecutive Sundays, the entire community was made aware of the intended union, given the chance to voice any objection, a prior contract, a blood relation too close. It was a practical system. But for you, it is a starting gun. It is the official public declaration that turns your private hope into a public fact. It makes the Lord's potential claim, that horrid whispered rumour, a matter of imminent public concern. For a heartbeat, there is only silence. And then you feel it. A subtle shift in the room's atmosphere, a collective, unspoken thought. It is not an outcry, but a wave of quiet, pitying recognition. You can hear a few hushed whispers break out, quickly shushed. You feel the weight of dozens of eyes on you, not with malice, but with a sorrowful curiosity. They are looking at you, the girl whose happiness is now officially at the mercy of the man in the castle. In that moment, your small personal love story ceased to belong to you and became another chapter in the village's long shared history of hope and fear. You do not move. You keep your eyes fixed on the candle flame, willing yourself not to react, not to show the tremor that has started in your hands. The carved knot is a small, hard point of reality in your palm, and you squeeze it until your knuckles ache. Father Thomas gives the final dismissal, and the church erupts in a release of pent-up energy. The noise is a relief, breaking the terrible tension. People begin to file out, eager to get outside and begin the real discussion. As you and your mother join the slow-moving crowd shuffling toward the heavy wooden doors, you can feel the buffer of space people are giving you. Friends who would normally greet you with a cheerful word now offer only a quick, tight-lipped smile and a nod before hurrying on. They don't know what to say. Your joy has been publicly marked with a question, and no one wants to get too close to the answer. Once outside in the grey, damp air of the churchyard, the feeling of isolation is even more intense. You see Elian standing near the gate, his face set like one of the stones he carves. He is surrounded by his own family, but his eyes find yours over the heads of the crowd. He gives you one sharp, definitive nod. It's a small gesture, almost invisible to anyone else, but it speaks volumes. I am here. I saw. I felt it too. Remember our vow. The brief connection is just enough to keep your own composure from cracking. The walk back to your cottage is made in near total silence. The village, which felt so familiar and comforting before, now feels like a stage, and you are the unwilling actor in a play everyone is watching. The first bell of the bands has been rung. The countdown has begun. 2 more Sundays. Then the wedding. Then the night. The question of what that night will hold is no longer a fearful whisper inside your own mind. It is now a public spectre hanging over the entire village, and most of all, over you. The days that follow the first reading of the banns are the longest of your life. The public announcement has transformed your private fear into a village-wide spectacle of whispers and pity. Your world, once so open and familiar, has shrunk to the 4 walls of your cottage and the lonely paths you take to the well and back. Your mother is a ghost of herself, her hands constantly busy with some small, nervous task, her face etched with a sorrow you cannot soothe. Even your brother Leo, young as he is, senses the oppressive weight in your home and has become quiet and subdued. You feel a profound and aching loneliness, the kind that can only be felt in the middle of a crowd. One evening, as you sit listlessly watching your mother mend a tear in Leo's tunic, a thought takes root in your mind. It is a desperate thought, one you would have dismissed as foolish just weeks ago. But you have been to the church, the centre of order and law, and it has only amplified your terror. If the lawful world offers no protection, perhaps you must seek it in the world that lies in the shadows of the law. You must go and see old Elspeth. Elspeth lives alone in a small, lopsided cottage at the very edge of the village, where the tamed fields give way to the wild tangle of the forest. She is the oldest person in the village, so old that no one can quite remember a time without her. She is the one the villagers turn to when a cow gives sour milk, when a child's fever will not break, or when a wound refuses to heal. She is the village's midwife, herbalist, and repository of its forgotten history. She is, in the language of the time, one of the cunning folk. A verifiable piece of history is that these figures, mostly women, operated in a space between medicine and magic, using a combination of herbal remedies, folk wisdom, and practical psychology. They were both respected and feared. a necessary part of the community that the priest often warned against but could never fully stamp out. The next afternoon, you tell your mother you are going to gather herbs for a sleeping draught. It is a half-truth. You take a small basket and a loaf of bread, fresh from the morning's baking, and set off. Once you are clear of the main cluster of cottages, you take the less trodden path that winds toward the woods. The air changes here. It smells less of wood smoke and livestock, and more of pine needles, damp earth, and decaying leaves. The path grows narrow, and the cheerful sounds of the village fade behind you, replaced by the rustle of unseen things in the undergrowth and the lonely call of a crow. Elspeth's cottage looks as if it has grown out of the earth itself. Its roof is thick with moss, and its walls, a mixture of river stone and ancient timber, seem to lean into the support of a large beech tree. Strange-looking herbs hang in bunches from the low eaves, drying in the air, and a sleek black cat sits on the doorstep, watching your approach, with eyes that seem far too intelligent for a simple animal. You hesitate, your heart thumping a nervous rhythm against your ribs. This is a threshold few people cross lightly. Taking a deep breath, you step forward and knock softly on the heavy wooden door. It swings open before your knuckles have even left the wood. Old Elspeth stands there, a small stooped figure silhouetted against the dim interior. She is a creature of wrinkles and bone, her face a roadmap of 100 winters. But her eyes are startlingly bright and clear, the colour of faded cornflowers. "I was wondering when you would come," she says, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. She steps aside, a silent invitation to enter. You duck your head and step inside. The interior is a single, circular room, much darker and more cluttered than any cottage you have ever been in. Bunches of dried herbs hang everywhere, filling the air with a dizzying, aromatic perfume. Shelves are crowded with clay pots, bundles of feathers, strange-shaped stones, and rolls of what looks like dried animal skin. It does not feel evil, merely ancient. A place outside of time. "You have a shadow following you, child," Elspeth says, gesturing for you to sit on a low stool by the hearth where a small, smokeless fire burns. A tall, cold shadow with a stone crown. She knows. Of course she knows. In a village this small, there are no real secrets. You sit, placing the loaf of bread on the floor beside you as a humble offering. The words you have been holding back for so long begin to spill out. Your love for Elian, the joy of your betrothal, the reading of the banns, and the terrible, suffocating fear of the Lord's right. Elspeth listens without interruption, her bright eyes never leaving your face. She does not seem shocked or surprised. When you have finished, a tear tracing a path through the grime on your cheek, she is silent for a long moment. She pokes the fire with a stick, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney. You expect a charm, perhaps, a sachet of herbs to ward off evil. But Elspeth offers something far more perplexing. This was a common and surprising social custom of such healers. Their advice was often given in riddles. It was safer. A cryptic saying could not be twisted into a charge of witchcraft or treason. It placed the responsibility of understanding squarely on the seeker. "A lord's power is built on stone and story," she finally says, her voice a low croak. "Everyone sees the stone of his castle. Everyone feels the weight of it. But his story, a story can have weak pages. A story can be rewritten." You stare at her, confused. "I don't understand." She ignores your confusion, her gaze fixed on the fire. "You cannot fight a shadow with a sword. That only makes it dance. You must find the thing that casts the shadow, the source of the light, or the object that blocks it." She looks at you directly then, her gaze sharp and piercing. The raven is a proud bird, child. He sits on the highest branch and thinks he rules the forest, but he is bound by the laws of the tree, same as the little wren. The law of the root is older and stronger than the law of the branch. She falls silent, and you know the council is over. It is frustratingly vague. Stone, story, shadows, roots. It feels like a child's game. But beneath the strange words, you feel a subtle shift in your thinking. She has not offered you magic. She has offered you a puzzle. You thank her, your voice barely a whisper. You get up to leave, but she stops you with a gesture. The bread is a good payment, she says. But your fear paid me before you even arrived. She smiles, a rare, crackling expression. Now go, and tell your stonemason to think less about the stones he is laying, and more about the ones that were laid before him. You leave her cottage and step back out into the afternoon light, feeling dazed, as if waking from a strange dream. Her words echo in your mind, a confusing jumble of images. But as you walk, a single idea begins to emerge from the fog. Find the old branch, the law of the root. She was pointing you towards something old, something hidden, something to do with law and history. That night, you meet Elian beneath the protective arms of the hand-fasting oak. When you repeat Elspeth's strange, cryptic words, he is silent for a long time. You can see him turning the phrases over in his mind, his practical nature wrestling with the folk magic strangeness of it all. Stone and story, he murmurs, looking not at you, but toward the distant silhouette of the Lord's manor. The stones laid before. He shakes his head, frustrated. It's nonsense. No, you insist, your voice gaining a strength you didn't know you had. Listen, the law of the root is stronger than the law of the branch. She wasn't talking about magic, Elian. I think she was talking about real law. Old law. He looks at you, a new light dawning in his eyes. He is a stonemason. He understands foundations. He understands how a single, flawed stone at the bottom can compromise the entire wall. Her words were like seeds dropped into the dark soil of your mind, and you could only wait to see what would grow. In the clever, practical mind of your Elian, one of those seeds had just found fertile ground. The wise woman's riddles have taken root in Elian's mind. You can see it in the way he looks towards the Lord's manor now, not with just anger or fear, but with a new, calculating intensity. He is a man who understands foundations, who knows that even the tallest wall is only as strong as the stones at its base. Elspeth's words have given him a place to dig. 2 nights later, he meets you at your usual sanctuary beneath the oak. There is a new energy about him, a tense excitement that makes his blue eyes shine in the moonlight. He tells you his plan, and your heart plummets even as it soars with a sliver of hope. He intends to get into the Reeves' office within the manor house itself. The records, he explains, his voice a low, urgent whisper. Elspeth spoke of story and brittle pages, of the law of the root. If such a law exists, it will be written down. It has to be. His logic is sound, but the risk is immense. The Reeve, Master Giles, is a pompous, meticulous man, a villager elevated to a position of petty power, who guards his authority jealously. His office, where the manor's records are kept, is his kingdom. To be found there would be disastrous. It's too dangerous, Elian, you plead, your hand tightening on his arm. If you are caught, and if we do nothing, he counters, his gaze firm. We wait for the 3rd reading of the banns and pray that the Lord is in a generous mood. No, that is not a plan. That is a surrender. Elspeth gave us a map, and I intend to follow it. You know he is right. Your fear for him is a cold, hard knot in your stomach, but your fear of inaction is greater. You can only nod, your throat too tight for words, and watch him melt back into the shadows, a man on a perilous quest. The next day is an exercise in agony. You see Elian from a distance, working with the other masons on the new hall, his movements as steady and precise as ever. No one would guess the audacious plan he harbours. Later, as he tells you the story of what happened, you can picture every heart-stopping moment as if you were there yourself. He tells you how he waited until the end of the day, when the other workers were packing their tools. He approached the reeve, who was overseeing the unloading of supplies, with a carefully crafted question about the grade of stone needed for the window lintels. It was a plausible query, just technical enough to make Master Giles puff out his chest with importance. This was a historically vital figure, the reeve, the Lord's man on the ground, the manager of the entire estate, and Elian knew that appealing to his vanity was the surest way to distract him. While the reeve was pontificating, Elian feigned a coughing fit, using the moment to excuse himself and slip away, not towards the exit, but deeper into the manor's ground floor. He moved through the corridors, his heart hammering, until he reached the reeve's office. The door was unlocked, as he knew it would be while Giles was still on the grounds. The room inside was small and stuffy. A heavy oak desk dominated the space, its surface neatly arranged with quills, an inkpot, and a stack of ledgers. But Elian's eyes were drawn to a smaller, iron-strapped wooden chest in the corner. The records chest. It was locked. He had expected as much. His gaze swept the room, finally landing on a large ornate key hanging from a hook on the wall behind the desk, almost hidden by a hanging tapestry. The key to the chest. He tells you of the terrible silent minutes he spent in that room, listening for the sound of the reeve's returning footsteps. He could hear the muffled shouts of men outside, the rumble of a cart's wheels on the cobblestones. Every sound was a potential discovery. With trembling hands, he took the key, unlocked the chest, and lifted the heavy lid. The smell that rose from the chest was the scent of ages, a dry, dusty perfume of old parchment and decaying leather. It was a treasure trove of the village's history, and a surprising glimpse into the past. These were not neat paper books, but a jumble of scrolls tied with ribbon and large hand-bound ledgers. The pages were not paper, but parchment, made from scraped and treated animal skin, some thick as leather, others thin and almost translucent. The ink was a faded brown, made from oak galls and iron salts, and the script was a cramped, spidery hand that was difficult to decipher. Each document was a precious, labour-intensive object, a testament to a time when a single written page was a thing of immense value. He didn't know what he was searching for. He only had Elspeth's words, the law of the root. He gently, carefully, began to sift through the oldest-looking documents. His basic literacy, learned from a kindly parish priest years ago, put to the ultimate test. He scanned rent rolls, tithe records, and property disputes, his eyes searching for any mention of marriage customs or feudal rights. The minutes stretched into an eternity, and then he found it. It was not a scroll or a book, but a single folded sheet of parchment tucked inside the cover of a thick ledger of household accounts. It was yellower and more brittle than the others, the ink faded to the colour of rust. At the bottom was a large, elaborate seal pressed into dark red wax, cracked and fragmented, but still recognisable as the royal crest of a long-dead king. It was the original charter for the fiefdom, the document that granted this land to the first Lord Valerius's family over a century before. His hand shook as he carefully unfolded it. The Latin was dense and full of flourishes, but he forced himself to go slow, deciphering the words one by one. It was mostly standard legal language, granting rights to forests, fields, and streams. But then, near the end, in a section detailing the duties and privileges of the tenants, he saw it. A clause, written in the same faded ink, in recognition de fide et servicio, in recognition of the faith and service of the good men of this village during the Northern War. Concedimus eis et heredibus eorum. We grant to them and their heirs libertatem ab omnibus antiquis et non Christianis consuetudinibus superfocum et matrimonium. Freedom from all ancient and unchristian claims upon hearth and marriage. His breath caught in his chest. There it was, the law of the root. A royal decree from a power far greater than any local lord, explicitly abolishing the very right that held your future hostage. The king himself had forbidden it on this land. Lord Valerius was either ignorant of this charter, or he had willfully buried it, preferring to rule by fear and a custom that had been legally voided on his own land for 100 years. It was just a few lines of faded ink on a brittle sheet of skin, but it held the power to unravel the present. He knew he couldn't take it. To steal from the Lord's records was a hanging offence, but he did the only thing he could. He read the clause again and again, burning the words, the shape of the script, into his memory. He traced the fractured royal seal with his finger, memorizing its pattern. Then, with painstaking care, he folded the parchment, placed it back in the ledger, locked the chest, and hung the key back on its hook. He slipped out of the office and melted back into the evening shadows of the courtyard, his heart pounding not just with fear, but with the wild, triumphant thrill of discovery. When he finishes his story, there in the moonlight under the oak, you are both breathless. The fear is still there, a cold counterpoint to the heat of this new knowledge. For what could you, two powerless peasants, do with a half-remembered clause from a forgotten document? How could your words stand against a lord's? But as you look at Elian's determined face, you know that doing nothing is no longer an option. You now possessed a truth, a fragile, dangerous truth. And the question that hung in the cool night air between you was no longer if you would fight, but how. The secret you and Elian now share is a heavy cloak. In some moments, it feels like a shield, a hidden layer of armor against the fear that plagues your waking hours. In others, it feels like a crushing weight, a truth so dangerous that even whispering it to each other under the moonlit oak feels like shouting it in the village square. The second Sunday of the banns has come and gone. The priest's announcement met with the same heavy, pitying silence as the first. The countdown continues, each day falling away like a dry leaf, bringing you closer to a confrontation you do not know how to win. You try to find solace in the familiar rhythms of your life. On a bright, breezy afternoon, you were down at the riverbank with a handful of other village women, washing linens. It is hard, physical work, pounding the coarse cloth against the smooth, flat river stones and scrubbing it with harsh homemade soap. But there is a camaraderie to it. The air is filled with the rhythmic thwack of wood on wet cloth, the gurgle of the current, and the easy chatter of women. Agnes is there, of course, complaining in good humour about the price of eggs, while a younger wife, Mary, speaks proudly of her toddler's first steps. For a brief, blissful hour, it feels like any other day. You can almost forget the shadow. Almost. A The first sign of its return is not a sight, but a sound. It is a low, rhythmic drumming, a sound so alien to the peaceful riverbank that all conversation falters. It is the sound of many horses moving at a steady, deliberate pace. Every woman stops her work, hands dripping, and looks up towards the path that leads from the manor. A moment later, they appear. It is Lord Valerius. He is astride a formidable black warhorse, a beast so large it makes the sturdy village ponies look like foals. The Lord is not alone. He is flanked by 2 men-at-arms in polished steel caps and leather jacks, their faces grim and impassive. Behind them rides Master Giles, the reeve, looking both terrified and self-important on his much smaller mount. This is a rare event, a verifiable piece of the feudal tapestry, a lord's progress through his domain. It was a way to inspect the lands, oversee projects, and most importantly, to be seen, to remind the tenants through sheer physical presence where the power resided. A wave of silent panic ripples through the women at the river. Laughter and chatter die instantly, replaced by a tense, waiting silence. This is where a deep and ancient social custom takes over, an unspoken choreography of deference. You must not stare. You must not meet the Lord's eye. You must make yourself small, insignificant, and unthreatening. One by one, the women around you avert their gazes, dropping into low, deep curtsies, their eyes fixed on the dirt in front of them. You do the same, your body moving out of pure, ingrained instinct. You bend your knees, bow your head, and stare at the muddy hem of your own dress, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. The sound of the hooves grows louder, closer, mixed with the jingle of harness and the creak of saddle leather. You can feel the vibration through the soles of your worn shoes. The Lord's party is moving slowly, deliberately, giving everyone time to pay their respects. He is on his way to inspect the progress on the new hall, the very project that promises you and Elian a future. The irony is a bitter taste in your mouth. You risk a quick glance upward through your eyelashes. Lord Valerius rides with an unnerving stillness, his back ramrod straight. He is not a young man, perhaps 40 or 50 years of age, with dark hair threaded with silver at the temples. His face is clean-shaven, his features sharp and aristocratic, his expression entirely unreadable. He seems to be looking over the village, his gaze sweeping across the fields, the cottages, the people, with a detached air of ownership. And then his gaze stops. It finds the cluster of curtsying women at the riverbank, and it sweeps past Agnes, past Mary, until it lands, with an unnerving, deliberate precision, on you. Time seems to slow. Your breath freezes in your lungs. He is looking directly at you. You know you should look down, break the contact immediately, but you are paralyzed, caught like a rabbit in a snare. His eyes are not cruel, not leering, not angry. They are a cool, dispassionate grey, the colour of a winter sky, and they are intelligent. In that single silent moment of contact, you know with absolute certainty that he knows exactly who you are. The reeve has told him. He knows of the marriage banns. He knows you are the stonemason's betrothed. The words of the hidden charter flash through your mind. Freedom from all ancient and unchristian claims. You feel the phantom weight of the carved knot in your hand, a symbol of your secret defiance. Every instinct screams at you to look away, to perform the submission required of you. But another, fiercer instinct, one you barely recognize, wants to hold his gaze, to silently declare that you are not just another piece of his property. You hold his gaze for a second longer than is proper, a tiny, reckless act of defiance. And then, your courage fails you. You drop your eyes to the ground, your cheeks burning, your heart hammering so hard, you are sure the other women can hear it. An eternity passes in a few heartbeats. You hear the soft snort of his horse, the creak of leather as he shifts his weight. You brace yourself, expecting a sharp word, a command, but none comes. After a moment, the sound of the hooves resumes its steady rhythm, moving away from you, continuing on its path through the village. Slowly, shakily, you raise your head. The Lord's party is proceeding towards the far side of the green, their backs to you. No one is looking your way. You finally exhale, the breath leaving you in a shudder. "Saints preserve us," Agnes whispers beside you, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "He looked right at you, girl, for the longest time." You cannot answer. You are numb. The abstract threat of a faceless lord in a distant castle has just been incinerated and replaced by the cold, assessing gaze of a very real man. The myth has been given flesh and bone. He has seen you, singled you out, and you are left with the chilling question of what he was thinking in that moment. It is impossible to know what a man like that is thinking when he looks upon the world he owns. Was it a threat, a warning, or simple, idle curiosity? The not knowing is its own kind of torture. You turn back to your washing, your hands moving automatically, but your mind is reeling. The encounter has changed the very texture of your fear. It is no longer a ghost story whispered by your mother. It is personal. It is immediate. The knowledge of the charter, your one secret weapon, now feels terrifyingly fragile. How can a memory of words stand against the power of a man who can silence a whole village with a single glance? You stand there, your knuckles white as you grip the cold, wet linen, and you watch the Lord's party grow smaller in the distance. The confrontation is no longer a future event you are dreading. You realise with a terrifying clarity that it has already begun. The Lord's gaze lingers in your mind, like the ghost of a touch, cold and unnerving. Sleep offers little escape, your dreams filled with silent, assessing grey eyes, and the looming silhouette of the castle. The encounter by the river has stripped away any lingering hope that you were merely being paranoid, that the whispers were just old stories. Lord Valerius has seen you. He knows. The silent, passive waiting has become an unbearable torment. Action is the only antidote to this kind of fear. That night, the air beneath the hand-fasting oak is not filled with the gentle comfort of previous meetings. It is charged with a cold, frantic energy. You and Elian do not waste time on tender words or quiet embraces. You both know the time for that will either come later or not at all. He knows, you state. The words are stark admission in the darkness. I saw it in his eyes, Elian. He was not just looking at a village girl. He was looking at me. Elian nods, his jaw tight with a cold fury. His ride through the village was not an inspection. It was a message, a reminder of his power before the final reading of the banns. He paces back and forth in the small patch of moonlight, his movements agitated, like a caged animal. We cannot simply hope he will ignore us. To do nothing now is to consent. He is right. Your fate is a stone rolling downhill, and if you do not find a way to stop it, it will surely crush you. The charter, you say, your voice a desperate whisper. The words you found. What can we do with them? We cannot show it to him. We cannot prove it. No, Elian says, stopping his pacing to face you. His eyes are intense, his mind clearly working, fitting pieces together like the stones of a complex archway. We cannot show him the parchment, but we can show him the truth. He takes a deep breath, and begins to lay out the desperate, audacious plan that has been forming in his mind since the moment he left the Reeves office. The confrontation cannot be private. A secret appeal in the Lord's Hall would be your word against his. He could laugh in your face, and you would have no recourse. No, the challenge must be public. It must have witnesses. The wedding feast, Elian says, his voice low and steady. After the ceremony in the church, when all our friends and family are gathered, our whole world will be there, in one place. You picture it, the small celebration that would be held on the village green, or in your mother's small cottage if it rained. A few musicians, extra loaves of bread and a barrel of ale, the entire village sharing in your joy. And into that scene of celebration, the Lord's man, most likely the Reeve, Master Giles, would arrive to make the claim. It is a matter of honour of a kind, Elian explains, tapping into a surprising social custom that governed even the most powerful men. Even a lord is bound by the laws of hospitality. To bring a dark claim into the heart of a wedding feast is a graceless act. The man who does it will already be on the back foot. The people will be with us, at least in their hearts. The setting is chosen, the when and the where, but the how is the most dangerous part of all. This is where their plan hinges on a particular understanding of law and proof from a time before printing presses and courthouses for the common man. In a world where written documents were rare and literacy rarer still, proof was often established through public declaration, through witnesses, and through the invocation of a higher authority. I cannot show them the charter, Elian says, his voice dropping even lower. So I will become the charter. For 2 days, he tells you, he has done nothing in his spare moments but recite the words he read on that brittle parchment. He has traced the shape of the dead king's seal in the dirt with a stick. He has whispered the archaic Latin to himself while he worked, until the phrases felt as familiar as his own name. The plan is this. When the Lord's steward arrives and makes his foul claim, you will not cry or plead. Elian will not draw a weapon or shout in defiance. Instead, he will step forward, calm and resolute, and he will speak. He will address the steward in front of the entire village, and he will recite, word for word, the royal proclamation that grants you your freedom. He will name the king who signed it. He will describe the wax seal at its base. I will not be a peasant refusing his lord, Elian says, his eyes burning with the intensity of his conviction. I will be a man reminding his lord of the king's own law. I will ask the Reeve if his master, Lord Valerius, truly means to defy a sworn charter of the crown. The sheer breathtaking audacity of it leaves you speechless. It is a masterful gambit. It reframes the entire conflict. This would no longer be about a peasant's disobedience. It would be about a lord's potential treason. Your part, he says, taking your hands in his, is the hardest of all. You must stand beside me. You must not weep. You must not show fear. You must look at that man as if you have the power of the king behind you. Your strength will be the signal to everyone watching. If they see you believe in my words, perhaps they will find the courage to believe too. You were building a bridge of words, and you could only pray it would be strong enough to bear the weight of your future. It is a terrifying role, to be the silent pillar of strength in such a moment. But as you look at Elian, at the fierce love and desperate courage in his face, you know you can do it. For him, for the future he is fighting for. I will stand with you, you say, your voice clear and steady, and I will ask him. I will ask the Reeve if his lord places his own desires above the king's law. Bye. As you speak the words, you realize how perfectly this desperate plan aligns with the wise woman's riddles. You are not fighting the shadow with a sword. You are finding the thing that casts it, the Lord's baseless claim, and shining a light. You are invoking the law of the root, the ancient charter, against the law of the branch, the Lord's immediate, tyrannical power. Elspeth had not given you a magic charm. She had given you a strategy, trusting that Elian's clever mind and your shared courage would be enough to decipher it. The plan is set. It is a fragile thing, built of memory and nerve. It could shatter in an instant. The Lord's man could simply laugh, ignore the claim, and drag you away. The villagers, terrified for their own safety, could turn their backs. Lord Valerius himself, enraged by such a public challenge, could decide to make an example of you both that would be remembered for 100 years. The risks are immeasurable, but it is a plan, it is a weapon, it is hope. You do not stay long under the oak that night. The new, heavy knowledge of your shared purpose is too much to bear in stillness. You must part, to prepare your own hearts for the trial to come. The final Sunday is now only a few days away, and then the wedding. As you walk back to your silent cottage, you feel a profound shift inside you. The trembling, terrified girl who met the Lord's gaze by the river is gone. In her place is a woman with a role to play in a dangerous, desperate drama. The fear has not vanished, but it has been forged into something else, something hard and sharp. Resolve. You and Elian are no longer just victims, waiting for a terrible fate. You are conspirators, standing together against a tyrant, armed with nothing but the truth. The third and final Sunday of the banns passes in a state of suffocating quiet. When Father Thomas reads your names for the last time and asks for impediments, the silence in the church is so absolute you can hear the flutter of a moth's wings against a window pane. No one speaks, no objections are raised, and so it is done. The path to your wedding day is officially cleared by the church, and now lies open. The thought brings you no joy, only a cold, sharp dread, like swallowing a shard of ice. There is only one impediment that matters, and he does not answer to the laws of the church. The days leading up to the wedding are a strange dream. The village, caught between its fear of the Lord and its affection for you and Elian, puts on a mask of celebration. Women who had avoided your gaze now stop you with offerings of advice and help. Men who had fallen silent in Elian's presence now clap him on the shoulder and wish him well. It is a fragile, brittle cheerfulness, a collective decision to pretend everything is normal, even as every soul in the village knows it is not. The eve of your wedding arrives, and the air around your cottage is thick with the sweet, malty scent of brewing ale. This is the bride ale, a tradition as old as the village itself. Your mother, her face grim with a concentration that belies the festive task, presides over a large cauldron bubbling over an open fire. It's a verifiable historical custom, a practical act of community. Neighbours have contributed barley and herbs, and tomorrow, after the ceremony, guests will pay a small token for a cup of the potent, celebratory brew. The coins collected will be your wedding gift, a small purse to help you and Elian begin your new life. Seeing your community invest in a future you are not certain you will have is a unique and quiet form of torture. You move through the day in a haze, helping where you can, your hands performing familiar tasks while your mind is miles away, rehearsing a single terrifying scene. You help a neighbour weave simple daisies and ivy into a garland for your hair tomorrow. You knead dough for the extra loaves of bread that will be shared at the feast. The women around you chatter, their conversation a nervous flutter of wedding lore and old wives' tales. Be sure to step into the church with your right foot first, for luck, Agnes advises sagely. And whatever you do, don't look back over your shoulder on the walk to the altar, another woman adds. You nod and offer a small, weak smile, your silence mistaken for bridal jitters. They cannot know that the luck you need cannot be summoned by a forward step or an unturned head. The shield you carry is not made of superstition, but of a secret, desperate plan. As the afternoon sun begins to dip lower, casting long golden rays across the village green, a deep ache of longing for Elian settles in your chest. You know you will not see him tonight. It is a deeply ingrained social custom, a firm belief that it is terrible luck for the bride and groom to meet on the eve of their wedding. The tradition, meant to heighten anticipation, feels like a cruel punishment tonight. It isolates you both at the very moment you need each other's strength the most. You stand at your cottage door, looking toward the cluster of homes where he lives, picturing him, hoping he can feel the unwavering resolve you are sending to him across the twilight air. Later, as the final preparations are winding down, your mother draws you inside the cottage, away from the others. The festive mask she has been wearing all day has fallen away, revealing the raw terror in her eyes. She knows you and Elian have a plan. She doesn't know the words you will speak or the charter you will invoke, but she saw the change in you after your visit to old Elspeth, and she saw the hard, flinty resolve that settled in Elian's eyes. She presses a small object into your hand. It is a simple, carved wooden pin, worn smooth with age, that she wore on her own wedding dress. For your protection, she whispers, her voice thick with unshed tears. May St. Jude, the patron of lost causes, keep you safe. Her fear is so palpable, so raw, it almost undoes you. You want to crumble into her arms, to be a child again, and have her tell you that everything will be all right. But you cannot. You are not a child anymore. You squeeze her hand, a silent promise that you will not break, and tuck the precious pin into the pouch at your waist, next to Elian's carved knot. You step outside alone to watch the last sunset before your wedding day. You walk a little ways from the cottage to the edge of the field and watch as the sky transforms. Ribbons of deep orange and fiery red bleed into shades of violet and bruised purple. The beauty of it is sharp, almost painful. You hold Elian's wooden knot in your palm, its endless loops a familiar comfort against your skin. You think of the whole journey that has brought you to this precipice. The simple, hopeful girl you were seems like a stranger from a different lifetime. Now you are a conspirator, a rebel, a woman about to wager her entire life on the power of a few forgotten words. The sunset painted the sky in colours of courage and blood, and it was impossible to know which one the morrow would demand. When you return to the cottage, the world is quiet. The fire under the cauldron has been banked, the bride ale left to cool. You perform the simple rituals of preparing for bed, each movement deliberate, a small act of calming your frayed nerves. You wash your face and hands in a basin of cool water. You slowly braid your hair. You lay out your wedding dress on your cot. It is the finest thing you own, a simple gown of bleached linen, painstakingly embroidered at the cuffs and collar by your mother's own hand. Beside it, you place the garland of daisies and ivy, a bridal uniform for a battle. Lying in the darkness, sleep is a distant country. The silence of the cottage is absolute, a stark contrast to the storm raging in your mind. You go over the plan, again and again. You hear Elian's voice reciting the Latin. You practice the question you will ask, forcing your mind to make the words sharp and clear. You picture the Reeve's face, trying to imagine his shock, his anger. You think of Elian, lying awake in his own cot across the village, his mind surely tracing the same terrifying patterns as yours. The weight of the morrow is immense. You are not just fighting for your love. You are challenging the order of your world. If you fail, the price will be catastrophic. But if you succeed, you will have won more than just a life with the man you love. You will have proven that the law of the root is, indeed, stronger than the law of the branch. With that final, resolute thought, you close your eyes and drift into a shallow, restless sleep to the sound of your own steady breathing in the last night of your girlhood. You wake to a world of grey stillness. Dawn has broken, but the sun is hidden behind a thick blanket of cloud, and the light that filters through your cottage's small window is flat and shadowless. For a fleeting, merciful moment, you do not remember what day it is. There is only the familiar comfort of your cot, the scent of wood smoke in the air, the soft breathing of your sleeping family. Then, memory returns, and the quiet peace is shattered. It is your wedding day. A strange, surreal calm settles over you. It is the quiet that comes after the storm of anxiety, the acceptance that arrives when there is no more time for fear. The path is set. The plan is made. All that is left is to walk it. Your mother is already awake, moving about the cottage with a heavy, deliberate silence. She helps you dress, her hands gentle but trembling slightly. The simple linen gown feels cool against your skin. The garland of daisies and ivy, woven with such forced cheerfulness yesterday, feels like a crown of thorns as she places it on your head. She takes the small wooden pin she gave you, her own wedding charm, and fastens it to the inside of your sleeve, a secret token of her love. You look not like a bride, but like a sacrificial offering, prepared for a ritual you cannot escape. When you are ready, you step outside. A small group has gathered to walk with you to the church. Your mother, your brother Leo, holding her hand tightly, and a few of the closest neighbour women, their faces etched with worry. The rest of the village watches from the doorways of their cottages, their expressions a painful mix of hope and dread. They are spectators at a drama whose ending they cannot predict. The walk is short, but it feels like a journey of 1,000 miles. The air is cool and heavy, the sky above a uniform, oppressive grey. As you approach the church, you see that the entire village is gathered in the churchyard, a silent, waiting crowd. And standing at the church door, waiting for you, is Elian. He stands beside Father Thomas on the stone threshold, his father and brothers behind him. He is wearing his finest tunic, the dark wool making his face seem pale in the flat morning light. But his eyes are clear, and his jaw is set with a resolve that mirrors your own. As your eyes meet across the crowded churchyard, a silent message passes between you. I am here. I am ready. Together. The fear in your heart does not vanish, but it is joined by a surge of profound, defiant love. You are not facing this alone. You reach the church door, and your mother places your hand in Elian's. His grip is firm and warm, a solid anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The ceremony itself, following a verifiable historical tradition, takes place right here, in facie ecclesiae, in the face of the church, for all the world to see. It is a public contract, witnessed by God and the entire community. Father Thomas begins the rite, his reedy voice reciting the familiar Latin. He asks the solemn questions, first to Elian, then to you. When he switches to the common tongue for your vows, your voices are steady, ringing with a clarity that surprises even you. I, Elian, take thee, he says, his eyes locked on yours, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part. You repeat the words back to him, your voice unwavering. Each word is a stone, and you are laying the foundation of your life, right here, in front of everyone. Each word is a quiet act of war against the man who would claim this moment does not belong to you. Then comes the ring. In your time and station, a ring is a rare luxury, but Elian insisted. He slips a thin, dark band onto your finger. It is not gold or silver, but simple iron, forged by the blacksmith in exchange for a week of Elian's labor hauling stone. It is a peasant's ring, a worker's ring, and to you, it is more beautiful than any royal jewel. It is a circle, like his carved knot. It is a promise without end. It is real. Father Thomas raises a hand in blessing. Ego conjungo vos in matrimonium. I join you together in matrimony, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. He gestures to Elian. You may kiss your bride. Elian leans in, and his lips meet yours. The kiss is brief, chaste, and deeply solemn. It is not a kiss of giddy romance, but of profound, unbreakable alliance. It is the final seal on your vows, both to each other and to the dangerous plan you have forged in the darkness. You are now husband and wife. You turn together to face the village. For a single, beautiful moment, the tension breaks. A genuine, spontaneous cheer erupts from the crowd. They throw a few dried flowers and grains of wheat, symbols of fertility and prosperity. In this instant, they are not thinking of the Lord. They are celebrating the simple, powerful fact of a love that has been sanctified. They are happy for you, but the moment is fragile, and it cannot last. As the cheers die down, the heavy, expectant quiet returns. The ceremony is over, but the day is not. You are joined together in the eyes of God, and now you must see if you can remain so in the eyes of men. Elian takes your hand, his fingers lacing through yours, and you begin to walk, leading the procession from the churchyard to the village green, where the modest feast has been laid out on long trestle tables. This is the walk to the battlefield. The village piper, a cheerful man named Tom, strikes up a lively tune on his pipes, but the joyful music feels jarring, a strange counterpoint to the dread that hangs in the air. The scents of the bride ale and fresh-baked bread reach you, but you feel you will never be able to eat again. You arrive at the green and take your places at the small, slightly elevated table set for the two of you. From here, you can see everyone. You are on display. The villagers find their places. The ale is poured, and the food is passed around. The performance of a celebration begins. People eat and drink and talk. Their voices a little too loud. Their laughter a little too forced. You sit beside your husband, your hand in his. The cold iron of your new ring, a constant reminder of the vow you just made. You do not eat. You do not drink. You simply wait. Every nerve in your body is alight, scanning the path that leads from the manor. Any moment now, a figure will appear. The reeve, the steward, the man who will come to test the strength of your vows. The sky above remains a heavy, unbroken sheet of grey, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. The feast has begun. The wait has begun. The wedding feast continues. A clockwork performance of celebration. The piper plays. The villagers drink the sweet, potent bride ale, and plates of bread and cheese are passed from hand to hand. You sit beside Elian, an island of stillness in a sea of forced merriment. Your own plate is untouched. Your cup of ale sits full. Your gaze, like Elian's, keeps returning to the path that winds down from the Lord's manor. Every snapped twig, every distant shout sounds like the beginning of the arrival. The waiting is a physical wait, a pressure building behind your eyes and in your chest. Then, the moment comes. A hush falls over the far side of the green, a wave of silence that spreads like a contagion until it has enveloped the entire feast. The piper's tune falters and dies. Every head turns. Walking onto the grass with a slow, deliberate stride is Master Giles. The reeve is not wearing his usual dusty work clothes. He is dressed in the Lord's formal livery, a dark tunic bearing the silver crest of a raven on the breast. He is alone, his hands empty, but he walks as if flanked by a dozen armed men. He is the Lord's will made manifest. He does not hurry. He walks past the silent, frozen villagers, his eyes fixed on the head table where you and Elian sit. The only sound is the soft tread of his leather shoes on the grass and the frantic pounding of your own heart. He stops a few feet before you, his shadow falling across your table. His face is a mask of stern duty, but you can see the deep discomfort in his eyes. He is a man performing a task he does not relish. He clears his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the profound silence. By order of Lord Valerius, master of this fiefdom, he begins, his voice reciting a memorized formula. And by right of ancient custom, I am bid to escort the bride, now wife to Elian the stonemason, to the manor house to await the pleasure of the Lord. The words hang in the air, ugly and obscene. You hear your mother let out a small, strangled gasp. You feel the collective intake of breath from the 100 souls watching. The threat is no longer a whisper, no longer a fear. It is a public declaration, a formal claim on your very person. This is the moment, the precipice. Before anyone can react, before you can even flinch, Elian rises slowly to his feet. He does not move with anger or aggression. He moves with a powerful, unnerving calm. He meets the reeve's gaze, and for a long moment, the two men are locked in a silent battle of wills. When Elian speaks, his voice is not a shout. It is quiet, yet it carries with absolute clarity to every corner of the silent green. Master Giles, he says, his tone respectful. We know you are a man of duty, and you serve your lord as you are bound to do. He pauses, letting the words settle. Then he takes a small step forward. But a lord is also bound by duty. He is bound by the laws of this kingdom and the charters of the king. The reeve's eyes narrow slightly, and then Elian unleashes his weapon. The Latin words, rehearsed 100 times in secret, pour from his lips, crisp and clear. Sciatis quod nos, in recognizione de fide et servitio, concedimus ais et heredibus eorum, libertatem ab omnibus antiquis et non Christianis consuetudinibus, super focum et matrimonium. The ancient language, the language of the church and the law, falls like a spell over the crowd. No one understands the words, but they understand the gravity. They understand that this is not the brawling defiance of a common peasant. This is something else entirely. Elian looks away from the reeve and turns his gaze to the assembled villagers. He translates for them, his voice ringing with conviction. Know that we, in recognition of faith and service, he proclaims, grant to them and their heirs freedom from all ancient and unchristian claims upon hearth and marriage. These are not my words. They are the words of King Osgood the Just, written in the founding charter of this very fiefdom, sealed with his royal crest in red wax, a document which lies in the records chest of the very lord you serve. A shockwave, visible and audible, ripples through the crowd. This is an impossible turn of events. Master Giles is stunned into silence, his mouth half open, his carefully prepared speech of authority utterly useless. He had come prepared for tears, for pleas, for a futile, angry outburst. He was not prepared for this. He was not prepared for history. He was not prepared for the law. In the space of a heartbeat, the power in the village square had shifted, flowing away from the man in the Lord's livery and toward the boy with nothing but words for a shield. Now it is your turn. You rise from your seat, your movements as calm and deliberate as Elian's. You go to his side, placing your hand on his arm, a silent, unshakable show of unity. You look directly into the Reeve's flustered, uncertain face. "Master Giles," you say, your voice as clear and steady as the tolling of the church bell. "You are the Lord's man, and as my husband said, we honour your office, so we ask you plainly." You lean forward slightly, your gaze sharp. "Does Lord Valerius command you to defy a sworn and sealed charter of the crown? Do you speak for your lord, or do you now speak against your king?" The trap is sprung. You have cornered him with a question he cannot possibly answer. He is a Reeve, not a baron. His authority extends only as far as his lord's, and Elian has just publicly declared that the Lord's authority is in violation of the king's. To press the claim now would be to implicate himself and his master in an act of rebellion against the throne. To back down would be to admit defeat to a peasant stonemason in front of the entire village. The Reeve's face turns a blotchy red. He opens his mouth, then closes it. He looks from your two resolute faces to the sea of watching villagers who are no longer looking at you with pity, but with a dawning, dangerous awe. The fear in the crowd is being rapidly replaced by something else. Hope. "This is irregular," Master Giles finally stammers, his authority crumbling. I was not aware. The records. I must consult the records. I must speak with the Lord." He does not wait for a reply. He turns on his heel, and with as much dignity as he can muster, which is not very much, he walks briskly away from the feast, his back stiff with humiliation. He does not look back. He is gone. A moment of stunned, absolute silence hangs over the village green. No one seems to breathe. And then, from the back of the crowd, a single, sharp clap. It is the blacksmith. He brings his huge hands together again, a sound like a hammer striking an anvil. Then another person joins in, and another. Within seconds, the entire village erupts in a tidal wave of thunderous, ecstatic cheers, a sound of pure, cathartic relief. They surge forward, surrounding you and Elian, clapping him on the back, touching your arm, their faces alight with a joy that is finally, truly real. You have won. Against all odds, you have faced the dragon and made it retreat. You have stood on your bridge of words, and it has held. In the center of the cheering crowd, you look at your husband, and he looks at you, a slow smile of pure, dazzling disbelief spreading across his face. You have won the battle. But as you watch the Reeve's retreating figure hurrying back toward the castle on the hill, a cold knot of certainty forms in your stomach. The war was not yet over. The cheers from the wedding feast eventually fade, a dying echo on the evening air. The villagers, their initial euphoria giving way to a more sober apprehension, retreat to the safety of their own homes, leaving you and Elian standing in the twilight. Your victory on the village green feels fragile, a temporary triumph that has surely enraged the Lord in his castle. You have won the battle, but now you must wait through the long, dark night for the consequences of the war. Your new home is a tiny, one-room cottage at the edge of the village, the one that Elian, as part of his work, helped to rethatch just last spring. The walls still smell faintly of fresh plaster and cut wood. It is small and sparse, with little more than a cot, a table, and a hearth. But it is yours. Tonight, however, It does not feel like a sanctuary. It feels like a watchtower. You light a single tallow candle, its small flame pushing back the thick darkness. You do not sleep. You sit together at the small wooden table, your hands clasped, listening. Every gust of wind sounds like a footstep, every hoot of an owl like a summons. The joy of your wedding day, the solemnity of your vows, are all held in suspension, overshadowed by the waiting. What will the dawn bring? A squadron of the Lord's men-at-arms? A decree of banishment? Or worse? You talk in low, hushed tones, going over the events of the day again and again, as if searching for a flaw in your victory, a mistake that will be your undoing. Elian's recitation of the Charter, your challenge to the reeve, the look on Master Giles's face as he retreated. It all feels dreamlike now, an act of impossible bravery. You touch the simple iron ring on your finger. It is the only thing that feels truly solid. The night is the longest of your life. But slowly, inevitably, the darkness outside begins to soften. A pale grey light seeps into the room, followed by the first tentative notes of the dawn chorus. The sun rises, and unlike the heavy, oppressive sky of your wedding day, the morning is clear and bright. The sky a crisp, brilliant blue. The new day's beauty feels like a cruel joke. Then you hear it, the sound you have been dreading all night, the steady, unmistakable rhythm of a single horse, approaching not at a gallop, but at a slow, deliberate walk. You and Elian rise as one, moving to the open doorway. Your hands find each other, a desperate final grip. The rider is one of the Lord's men-at-arms, the same impassive, stone-faced man who rode at his master's side during the progress through the village. He brings his horse to a halt a few feet from your cottage and dismounts. He does not draw his sword. He simply stands there, looking at you, his expression unreadable. In his gloved hand, he holds a single, rolled sheet of parchment. He walks forward, and without a word, extends the parchment to Elian. Elian takes it, his hand trembling almost imperceptibly. The man-at-arms gives a curt, formal nod, turns, remounts his horse, and rides away as silently as he came. You are left alone in the bright morning sunlight, holding a message from the man who holds your lives in his hands. You look at the parchment. It is sealed with a disc of hard black wax, stamped deeply with the raven crest of the House of Valerius. A verifiable sign of authenticity, this seal, pressed by the Lord's own signet ring, means the message is his and his alone. With fumbling fingers, Elian breaks the seal. He unrolls the parchment and reads, his eyes scanning the few lines of sharp, angular script. You watch his face, bracing yourself for the worst. But his expression is not one of fear. It is one of profound, slack-jawed disbelief. He reads it a second time, then looks at you, his eyes wide with a stunning, unreadable emotion. What is it? You breathe, your voice a thread. He cannot speak. He simply hands you the parchment. Your own literacy is more basic than his, but the letters are stark and clear. The message is short. Stonemason, it reads, you have a better memory for the law than my reeve, and you have a wife of rare courage. A law forgotten is a law ignored, but a law remembered must be a law upheld. The King's Charter stands. That is all. There are no threats, no summons, only a blunt, shocking acknowledgement. But that is not all that was in the roll. Tucked inside is a second, heavier piece of parchment. It is a formal legal document. At the top, a scribe has written the words, "Quit claim." It is a legal release, a document common enough in disputes over land or debt. But this one releases you, and your heirs from any and all claims of ancient and feudal custom as prescribed by the royal charter of King Osgood. It is signed at the bottom with the bold black signature of Lord Valerius. The shadow is gone, not just chased away for a night, but legally, formally, and permanently banished. The relief is a physical blow, so overwhelming it makes your knees weak. You lean against Elian, the two of you holding each other up, the parchments clutched between you. The fear and tension of the past weeks finally break, and you weep, not with sorrow or terror, but with a release so profound it feels as if your very soul is being washed clean. You will never know the Lord's true reasons. Perhaps he was a man who, beneath his cold and intimidating exterior, held a grudging respect for the law. Perhaps he was merely testing the spirit of his people to see if it had been extinguished entirely. Or perhaps, and this seems most likely, he was a man who enjoyed power not in its use, but in its potential, in the fear it inspired. And you, with your courage and your desperate plan, had shown him that his power, in this one instance, was a phantom. You had called his bluff, and for reasons of his own, he had chosen to fold. You stand in the doorway of your new home, in the first true morning of your free life. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth, just as it did on that evening you first met Elian by the well. But everything is different. The world is new. You think of old Elspeth and her cryptic words, and you understand that the old woman's greatest gift was not a riddle, but the belief that a story, once written, could one day be changed. And so your days begin to unfold, one into the next, each one a quiet testament to the love you fought for. The passing of time is marked not by the tolling of a fearful bell, but by the gentle and comforting rhythms of a life made free. You wake to the warmth of the morning sun slanting through your small window and to the steady breathing of the man who sleeps beside you. His hand finds yours in the quiet moments before the day begins, a simple, constant reassurance. The iron ring on your finger is a permanent reminder of the vows you made and defended, a circle of strength that will never be broken. There is the scent of baking bread, the taste of fresh water from the well, the sight of the open, endless sky, no longer oppressed by a castle's shadow. Your future, once a terrifying, uncertain path shrouded in fog, now stretches out before you, clear and bright. It is a simple life, a quiet life, but it is a life that is wholly and completely your own. And as you feel the deep peace settle into your bones, a peace earned through courage, and a love that refused to break, you can finally allow yourself to rest. Let the story fade, like the last embers of a fire, into a soft and gentle warmth. There is nothing left to fear. There is only this peace, this quiet, this gentle drift into a deep and restorative sleep. Sleep now. Rest well. Your own story is waiting for the dawn.